Hello everybody, Gamer here, and today I will be doing my SGDQ submission video for RWBY Grimmett Clips, Pyrrha Inbounds. A few things to note. This game is an action game based off Rooster Teeth's RWBY. That only really matters for the characters. Nothing else is related to the show. And then we will have inbounds, which means we need to beat the whole game without going out of bounds, and that's the only restriction. So we can still do skips and any tricks we want as long as they are within the invisible walls placed by the developers that define the bounds of the level. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like a regular action game, we will have a few things we can do. We can jump, light attack, heavy attack, counter, and ranged attack. So off the start here, you're going to see me doing this really weird movement, which I will explain in a bit. This is called bee-hopping. But we actually have our first skip right at the start. So basically, the major abuse we're going to be using in this game is counter canceling, which allows us to cancel any attack animation in the air by countering. So that's going to allow us to go very fast. Basically, the movement we use is jump, dash. Sorry, 1 second. So basically we jump, dash, heavy attack, and then counter. And I already skipped 2 fights, and the way this game is really broken, and that's what makes it really fun. You can do so many skips, and the reason I personally like Inbounds is because it does force you to do some fights. With many other characters, if you were playing regular any percent, you would have just skipped straight to the end of the level here. And these first fights are pretty simple. I'm not doing anything too complicated for them. But later on, fights are pretty enjoyable. Alright, so we're gonna lose some time here. I'm doing this run live to replicate a marathon run, and I will be using marathon safe strats. But I'll explain a lot here. So the first thing you're going to notice is that I still have skill points available. So in RWBY, we allow skill points to be used up pretty much. So it's in a way not really a new game plus run, but we're allowed to have level 10 characters starting the run because it takes like a few minutes to get to level 10. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a death abuse to set up for a wrong warp. And the reason I don't have all my skill points invested is because I actually want to die fast. So the main thing to note about this game is attacks are a mix between classic, like light and heavy attacks. Range attacks aren't really that useful because they're very slow. But yeah, now we're going to invest in the extra health. A few other things to mention. As you see, I can counter cancel ranged attacks as well. Like any animation in the air, I can cancel it. In terms of mechanics, that's pretty much it. You can combine pretty much everything to do really cool things, such as skips and so forth. But yeah. And each character has a decent amount of combos by combining light and heavy attacks. You'll see me sometimes charge up my heavy. You can do that by just pressing heavy. And we can actually release it earlier than the game allows you to. If you see, I fully charged it and the glow appears. And that's the normal release, but it's actually, the move gets charged about 40 milliseconds earlier. So you can release it early. Also, each character has an ultimate ability. You can see it above my health. For health, it's not exactly health. Think of it more like a shield, to where when it runs out, you can still take a hit or two. So yeah, this first fight is pretty straightforward. I guess I can explain the skips I did at the start. Pretty much, you can get on anything you see. Most of the things in and out of bounds have collisions based on their appearance. So if you can get above something using any combination of movement techniques, it works. Some movement techniques we can use abilities such as aerial heavy or ultimate attacks to gain height, and you'll see me use that later on. Alright, cool. That was bad. I didn't get the stun I wanted, so. But that's fine. This should still be a pretty good time. There's also team attacks like the thing I used there, which basically, once you set it up to stun an enemy, okay, so basically how team attacks work is you can, once an enemy is stunned, you can use a charged heavy on them, and it will set up for an extra attack. However, that keeps the enemy stunned until that attack goes off, so we can use it as additional stuns. So basically, earlier you saw me die, and the reason I did that was to reset a checkpoint. Now I triggered that checkpoint, and the next level is going to load up, but it has the checkpoint trigger from before. So because of that, it's going to wrong warp me to the equivalent checkpoint in the new level. There's also a lot of, there's not a lot of RNG. The only RNG in this game is stuff like this, which is what path you land in. There's split paths in this game, and what path you land in will determine what trick you need to do. Let's keep it. So I got the harder path, but that should be fine. Alright, here we go. So wrong warps in this game basically work with checkpoint abuses. You trigger a checkpoint, and it puts, while the level is ending, and it puts you in that specific numbered checkpoint of the next level. It's pretty straightforward. Still pretty cool though. I'm also not doing any insane skips, I guess. Just going over a few fights for now. Generally, this category doesn't go too heavy on skips, and we also fight the final boss of the game. That's a main appeal for a lot of people, because any percent does not fight the final boss. So a lot of people started running inbounds just to have an actual final fight. So this level is pretty straightforward. We have another point to defend. We won't see any more of these after this level, and then we go to just regular levels where we just have to run through the end, fight the waves of enemies when prompted, and then, yeah, that's pretty much it. So the thing I mentioned about two different paths, and paths splitting up, which path you get every time is random, and the next level is the first time that actually matters, because one of the paths, in this level, both paths are skippable. However, in the next level, only one of the paths is one we can skip. So that greatly affects, that's the most RNG you'll have in this game. So what path you get can determine if you can do a small skip or not. There's also fight RNG, but generally, once again, that's just a bit of time lost. Nothing that can potentially kill the run. All fights are easily doable, especially since we're not playing on a hard difficulty. Once you beat a level, you're actually allowed to exit out of it and move on to the next one. So we usually do that because a lot of them have ending cutscenes that play. We only don't exit out of a level when we want wrong warp. So this level actually has the potential for another death warp, but it's not marathon safe. Marathon. So for this purpose, generally, the game is pretty fast-paced in terms of everything. We have quick fights, and then we also have cool skips. And there's always the potential to save frames, quote-unquote, more do fights better, do skips faster, get every skip first try. There's only one real skip that's pretty bad if you miss it. And that's Chapter 5, we'll get there eventually, I'll explain once we get there. So yeah, we had another simple fight here. We're actually going to be skipping the next encounter. This is probably one of the simplest skips that every casual player can learn. So. And I have my inputs so you can see the inputs I'm doing. store everything. Obviously won't have those for GDQ, but just to show that this game actually requires pretty good like input management. Okay, so we got the good path. This main street. We can skip this fight. That's really good. Nice. So here in a regular run, I once again death abuse to try and set up a wrong warp. But because the wrong warp can be really easy to fail, it would be a reset point, and we can't have that at a marathon. So I'll straight up play it out like without the wrong warp. For commentary, I know it's kind of like, it's not the easiest thing for me to commentate while I play, so I will have people to help with the commentary. I'm aware that like I'm not doing the best commentary right now, but I am doing this on the fly to get a submission in, because I think this game is really cool and very unique in terms of how it's like an action game combined with like classic speedrun tech such as like skips and out of bounds, and yeah, pretty much cool tech. Alright, so here we have the first and only mini boss of the game. This is Major Ursa, and he has a few attacks he can use. Basically, we want him to use the rock attack. There we go. So this basically stuns him, which means we can do a lot of damage. While he's not stunned, he's constantly in a guarding state, which doesn't allow actually hurting him. Like, as you can see, I'm not doing a lot of damage. I'll actually heal up here. I'll wait for my thing to recharge. This is very bad RNG, pretty much. You usually want to have the battle finished by now. Yeah, he's not giving me the rocks. I'll just go to get him off here. Yeah. Alright, he should be dead here. Alright, nice. Not the best, but still pretty decent. Now we reach chapter 4. This chapter is really weird. Unless you do the wrong warp, there's no other skip really in the chapter. So we're going to have to play through this chapter normally. Like we would in Untitled Chapter. There technically is a skip, but Pyrrha can't do it, and it requires going out of bounds. And there's also an auto-scroller. Like, this is probably the best chapter to play donations in, and there's going to be a lot of downtime in this chapter. And then the run really picks up. So we're going to trigger this fight here. That was a battle. That's unfortunate. That enemy can cause a counter prompt, which will stop me, which is just faster to just kill it there. Nice. So yeah, this is the most downtime the run will have at this point. It's just another fight like the ones before. Nothing new, nothing unique, and we'll have an auto-scroller after this. So for this auto-scroller, it's technically not really an auto-scroller, but it also kind of, we basically need to collect dust crystals from various parts around the map, and put them in the cart so we can move the bomb to the end of the level before it blows off. So if we get perfect RNG, it's an auto-scroller, but we can lose time. And the way we lose time is pretty much if we don't get good RNG. Because if you don't deposit crystals fast enough, the cart stops. So if it stops, we lose time. And there's 3 possible locations in the L cycle. Alright, so we got medium RNG here. That's fine. Alright, yeah. Yeah, we got medium to good RNG. That's fine. And then now we know where the 3rd crystal will appear. The reason I also don't use the counter cancel movement around enemies is because it can counter an enemy and stop me. So here I will be counter canceling ranged attacks just to stop enemies until I get the crystal so they don't block my path. Alright, and now we'll move on to the second section. This is worse RNG. We're basically on a small timer to get the perfect RNG for the final section of the game. We should make it. Though. I have to stay in the middle because I don't know where the next crystal will spawn. Alright. So now we wanted to deposit it, since the card hasn't stopped at all, we want to deposit it at 414, 413. So we're just waiting here. Ready. And then that guarantees the last crystal will spawn up here. And that should be it. Yeah, that's a demonstration of perfect RNG. And I'm already in the pause menu, so we can exit as soon as the cutscene plays. Nice. Very good run. So now we go to the chapter that fixes or kills runs. Has the hardest skips. And this is very reset heavy chapter because of a certain trick. Good thing is, it only kills the runs because every good run does it. So, first we have this trick. I'll try it 2 times more. Alright, yeah, that's not. So I'm gonna do it deliciously, real quick. I'll probably straight up go for this during the marathon, no reason to lose time. Basically, we need to find a key, and it's RNG. So if we find the key, we can actually go from this path, which is faster. I got the bad RNG on this side, which kind of sucks, but it's fine. So we're approaching the hardest skip in the entire run. You technically have 2 shots to do it, but if you fail it the first time, it's harder next time because the enemies spawn. I use a visual cue for this. Alright, I'll give it a second chance. I failed it at the hardest part. Okay. I will likely not pull this off in the marathon, so it's fine that I missed it here. The reason we want to skip this fight is just because of how variable it can be. So. Alright, we've got good RNG here. That's fine. See, I'm gonna lose a decent amount of time here. So we're approaching on the final fight of the chapter, which is... we're gonna face another very large and strong enemy. Like the Major, so this one's the Mutant Beowulf. And we will use it to death abuse. Unlucky, I missed that. Alright. So yeah, these fights are pretty straight up solid. For the mini boss, I mean, it's not really a mini boss because we'll fight more of them later, but it's definitely an elite enemy. We're actually going to let him kill us because it's going to respawn us at the end of this wave as well. Alright, here we go. So I'm losing time because I failed that trick earlier, but that's fine. There's a really hard setup you can do to not death abuse and instead just skip the checkpoint. But I would not count on doing it in a marathon. So here we can use a ranged attack to stun him. Okay. I didn't get the fight I wanted, but it's fine. And now we've triggered the checkpoint. Yes. So we've actually skipped straight to the end of chapter 6. And chapter 6 is actually split into 4 parts. So we're just gonna do the final fight. This is probably the most RNG out of any wave. This and chapter 7 final wave. These waves can be very variable in what enemies you face. Right now we have fine RNG, but it could be pretty bad. Yeah, this is bad RNG. Okay, actually it's not, because we got the 8-wave version. But I could get a pretty good gold here, because this was fine RNG, as long as I get good RNG in the final one. But yeah, generally, these waves have tons of different possible enemy spawns. Alright. And now we need to fight 2 of these guys. Right. And then one more. That's unlucky. Alright, so that's chapter 6. Literally just one fight. I got pretty much the best RNG there. Now we go to chapter 7. Chapter 7 also has a few cool skips.
What in the world are we? Our scroll signals are too weak. Let's head that way to the tower. We might be able to amplify the signal. We've got company.
So that's the only fight we're gonna do for a bit here. So this chapter revolves around going to communications towers and activating them. One is to our left, but we're going to ignore the first one. Yeah. So that's how we skip the first fight on the first communications tower. And then we're going to go for a decently hard skip here. Alright, cool first try. So the second and third tower, we actually have to activate it. So I have to go out of my way to get this here. We have a quick fight here. So for the next chapter, I'll start talking about that. There's actually a split path, and that determines whether we do a skip or a wrong warp. So that's going to be pretty big, so look forward to that. But for now, we activate the last tower, and we go to this next area here. So this is also another heavy RNG area. Sadly, we can't skip it. This is sadly an unskippable dialogue conversation. Perfect time for donations though. Alright, so firstly it's okay RNG. Generally, for medium-sized enemies, the optimal thing is to just use quick charged heavy, but like I want to emphasize how hard it is to properly time a quick charged heavy, just because you have pretty much like a 40 millisecond window for each one. That's actually pretty bad here. Okay, I needed to cancel that earlier, just so it didn't do the Pyrrha attack there. Cool. I'll have to slightly unscript that for a second, yeah. Because I got hit once, so it messed up my rhythm. This is probably some of the worst RNG you can get on this wave. That's fine. That was a pretty bad wave. Good wave to end it. Alright, and that's chapter 7. So chapter 8. This first fight, the first two fights are pretty straightforward. This chapter introduces these pools. If we step in them, we take damage, and they can kill you.
Over there. Cut off the pipeline.
So there's this poison gas that prevents us from moving on until we beat these wolves. You're going to see that again down there. And here's the next split path. So depending on what path we take, I will either do a skip in the path, or I will do a wrong warp in the final fight. And it's completely dependent on what path I get. Ideally, we do want the right path for the wrong warp. Alright, and we got the left path, that's fine. So here I will be showcasing the skip. It's pretty precise, so I don't want to run. Yeah, so we have to jump around from here. And we do skip that fight, which does save a lot of time. But in return, we don't get the wrong warp at the end. So you're going to see here I'm going to get a really fast chapter 8 split, but then my chapter 9 split is going to be really bad, because I don't wrong warp. And this is pretty much the worst RNG wave. So yeah, the end game is pretty RNG heavy in terms of what enemies you face. Like, it can determine a lot. And this is where we are first going to see the white androids, which are pretty dangerous. They can snipe you off screen. So yeah, you're going to see me get approximately a 2-minute time save here. Yeah, so these are the white androids. They are really dangerous, especially because when you get close to them, they hit you back. And a single one of their grenades can pretty much kill you. So now, whoa, I'm so far ahead. But I actually didn't do the wrong work because I got. So because of that, I have to play through this level.
Where we're building a better tomorrow today.
Stay alert. This could be an ambush.
So pretty much, except one small part, we are no skips from now on. everything else is out of bounds now. And we can't go out of bounds, so. Nice. That's not lucky, I don't have an ult here. I wasted 2 of them. I'll actually get an ult off of this. Yeah. Please. Okay, that was a pretty slow fight. But basically, this is exactly where the round warp would take me. So as you can see, I'm pretty much even on time. Alright. The second combo I use, the Slide Light Heavy, actually gives me more ultimate progress, which, depending on the spawns, I might have needed there. I'll pop the ult here. Just because I didn't see when the other one was going to hit. Alright. Alright, so this fight can be really weird. Okay, so we didn't get the androids, which means it's going to be slightly slower. Nice, at least we got that part fast. Okay, so we'll go for a single skip here. It's not really, actually I won't go for it. It's not consistent enough. And I want to show off how the marathon will be done. So if I wasn't doing a marathon, I'd go for a small skip here to pretty much skip that. But if I mess it up, I'm out, so. Alright, so now we're like uploading a signal so people can track us and save us from this evil scientist. It's whatever. Very good kill. Alright, we got this part. We didn't get them muted, that's fine. Yeah, as you see, I'll lose a lot of time here. Simply because I didn't do the wrong one. So. Basically, by the end of Chapter 9, the Chapter 8 RNG balances out. Oh, that didn't kill. That's unfortunate. I miscalculated the damage. We want this guy to jump. Alright, So that chapter 9 was pretty much perfect. And now we have the final exam. Chapter 10, there's 3 major fights, then a waved encounter, and then the final boss.
We'll take care of everything. Count on us.
We got the good RNG here. That's really good. So this next section, I gotta break up a bunch of small tanks, and yeah. Alright. Pretty solid. Okay. So now this chapter introduces these spikes, which won't really matter that much. So these tanks can spawn enemies, so I do them in the order that they spawn enemies in. Basically, I destroy the ones that spawn enemies first. That's all okay. Alright. And then we'll have 2 to 3 androids here. Yeah. Not the best fight, but it's fine. Cool. So now, those were the 3 fights. We're going to have a 4-wave encounter, and then the final boss, which is actually pretty cool. I actually want to keep high ults here. I don't really want to use up ults.
Welcome to the testing grounds. Why don't you go ahead and test us? They could use the exercise.
Oh, I couldn't get in time. That's unlucky. Let's get this guy. Alright. Okay, so I'm gonna lose some time in this wave. Mainly because I couldn't get the attack up in time. Please tell me this is in range. Yes. Very good. Pretty solid move. That's also really good energy. Nice. Oh, that's unlucky. Alright, I had a good comeback with that ult. Okay, so how the final boss works, basically, you can only really attack him when his stinger is down. And for him to put the stinger down, you want him to, you need to be in front of him. And if you're not in front of him, he will borrow up, pretty much. Oh, I missed the first one. That's unlucky. He didn't notice me. That's unlucky as well. So now he's gonna spawn small minions as well as white anger. Alright, so I had to do that there because I was scared of dying. No matter what, I need to try to be in front of him to get the hits in every round. Can I please get the... Okay, I'm getting pretty bad RNG here. Alright, there we go. The boss can also basically insta-kill me if he lands on me. Alright, this is the final stage of the fight. I need approximately 2 to 3 more hits on the boss. Unlucky. Yeah, okay, I need one more as long as I get an ult off, which probably won't happen. Nice visual bouquet. Yeah, unfortunate. Okay, boss is pretty much dead. Nice. And that's it. Pretty good. Honestly, a 55-minute estimate should be alright. The category is pretty much done right now. We just need to escape the base. And I can just leave my controller here. And timer ends on fade out. So yeah, that's the run. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you think it's something cool to show off. Yeah, this game is really, really interesting. There's tons of unique movement options, there's tons of cool combat things. We basically have tons of skips. So yeah, I hope to see this game represented in some form. Thank you.